There have been protests across Europe and in the United States over the targeted killing of 5 journalists in Gaza on Sunday. The Israelis hit a media tent outside the main gate of the al-Sharif hospital in Gaza City, killing the Al Jazeera correspondent al-Sharif along with 4 colleagues. The British government has called for an independent investigation. The UN called the attack a grave breach of international law. The 5 journalists had worked extensively across Gaza, documenting the death and destruction. They were killed ahead of expected offensives that will further expand the Israeli military operations across the Gaza Strip. Well, let's speak live to Sarah Derur, who's head of protection at Frontline Defenders, part of the Journalists in Distress network, which helps journalists globally. And thank you so much for being here on the programme. How alarmed have you been by what actually happened on Sunday?
Thank you, Matthew, so much for inviting us for this conversation. I think the events on last Sunday are part of a pattern and a trend that we have seen unfolding since October 2023 in the Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, the killing of al-Sharif, but also Mohammed Kraika are another one of killings of 2 human rights defenders who are also journalists, working, as you mentioned, on documenting violations and a genocidal campaign ongoing in the Gaza Strip.
And you think it is targeted killings?
Certainly, there is enough evidence to believe those killings were targeted. First, by the threats expressed by the spokesperson of the IDF a few days ago, which had certainly put a target on Anas' back, and Anas was clearly speaking on that. He knew he was being targeted, he knew he was being threatened, and he published a letter mentioning it. The pattern that we have seen of targeting of human rights defenders, journalists, and their families, for example, in the case of Anas, he not only his family was killed just a few months ago, his father was killed on his family house, but also in the case of Muhammad, who was killed just a few meters away from where his mother was executed last year by IDF, along with other Palestinian nationals in front of the al-Sharif hospital. So looking at the region, the specific place where they were killed, the fact that the tent was a known tent for journalists, the fact that there were previous threats against Anas, the fact that their family members have been previously targeted adds on to a clear pattern of direct targeting of the 2 of them because of their work.
Yes, I mentioned in the introduction what the UN has said about it. Tell me and remind viewers what protections do journalists have under international law?
So journalists enjoy protection by the international human rights law and also by international humanitarian law. In this particular case, the 2 of them as journalists were human rights defenders. That means they are protected by the UN Declaration of Human Rights Defenders that protect the right to protect rights. So it means they have the right to promote human rights and they have the right to hold and to seek information on human rights. They are also protected by the Geneva Convention, so the international humanitarian law. So their Article 79 under the Geneva Convention from 1949, which protects civilians. And in this context, the 2 of them, specifically Mohammed and Anas, I'm speaking on the 2 of them, but of course the 5 journalists in this context were protected as civilians caught in a hostage.
Yes, you will have seen what the Israelis have said about Anas al-Sharif and the documentation.
A hostile conflict environment.
Sorry, it slightly froze the line to you, so I hope you're still with me. Let me ask you another question, because you will have seen what the Israelis have said about Anas al-Sharif and the documentation that they have shown. In terms of accountability, if the Israeli claims don't stack up, would there be a case against the person that ordered the killing, the person that carried out the killing?
So we have seen in previous killings so far a consistent pattern both of impunity. I'm just going to mention one well-known case, Shirin Abu Akleh, who was killed, a journalist from Al Jazeera, who was killed while doing her work. Her case was never brought to justice. there have been a number of communications, both from the ICJ and from ICC, different decisions in which they have condemned the pattern and the practice of labeling journalists as terrorists, such as in this case. So what are we seeing is both a pattern of labeling as terrorists, but also a pattern of impunity when targeting journalists doing their work in that context. So, of course, there is a case, but there is already previous resolutions, communications from different UN bodies, communications from different international courts. So there is a need also for more concrete action from different states to ensure the international laws to which they also bind to. So by that, I'm not only talking about international humanitarian law, but also the international human rights law. So both Israel, but also all the other member states need to be accountable and engage on making sure those legislations are secure and the human rights offenders can enjoy the right to defend rights in that context.
Sarah Draw, we have to leave it there, but we're grateful for your time. Thanks for talking to us here on BBC News.